We hope that you enjoyed tonight's video. Today we're going to be reviewing this Tag Heuer watch. If you like our watch reviews, please subscribe. We have about 120 watch reviews on YouTube now. Okay, this is a Tag Heuer watch, and it's a men's watch, and it's a diver watch with the alarm feature. And has about 40.5 millimeter case size from side to side, not including the crown. The bracelet is a 20 millimeter bracelet. Okay, we see the minute hand and the hour hand there, as well as the hour markers. All of that is loomed and glows in the dark. Let's see what else. The bezel ring does turn, and it turns counterclockwise, as most divers' watches do. It doesn't turn it the other way, it just turns counterclockwise. This watch is rated at 300 meters or 990 feet waterproof. This is a really handsome watch, and it's very high quality. Some of the watch, it does have a sapphire crystal, which reduces scratches, so it's a high quality crystal. Some of the watch is highly polished, and some of it isn't. We see that the case is highly polished, and we notice that some of the bezel ring is polished. We notice these little squares ever so often, and they're polished, but these larger areas where the numbers are what we call brushed surface, kind of a brushed stainless steel. The entire watch is made out of stainless steel, both the case, the bezel ring, as well as the bracelet. Okay, speaking of the bracelet, it's also a brushed finish. It's not high gloss, it's not been polished. And when you get your watch in the mail, it will have this blue protective plastic to keep it safe. The box that comes in will look something like this. Okay. As with most divers' watches, it has a deployment clasp. So what that means is that you can't unclasp it just by pulling on it. We remember that that's how some watches are, and almost all watches were until fairly recently. But this watch, in order for it to come off your wrist, not only do you have to pull on this, but we see this button here and the button across from it. Both of these buttons have to be pushed simultaneously in order for it to let go. If you push just one, it's not going to work. The reason they make watches like that is just that they don't come off as easy. Let's say that you're swimming, and you're swimming in an ocean or something like this, and you brush that up against something, maybe your clothing or maybe coral or just something, and it'd be terrible if that watch came off. So they use that deployment. Another thing that we can talk about this watch is when it comes from the factory, it comes with an 8-inch bracelet. And that's how it comes from the factory. And most men don't have an 8-inch wrist. Most men have about a 7 to 7.5 inch wrist. So what you'll want to do is, if you buy this watch at the local jeweler, you'll want to make sure that you get it fitted. And the local jeweler should not charge you any extra money to take 1 or 2 links out. If you buy this watch off of Amazon or eBay or Sam's Club or any other places, you may want to tell them ahead of time what size wrist you have. Let's say you have a wrist that measures 7 1/4 inches, and you can ask the seller to please very carefully remove 2 or 3 links, whatever they deem as necessary in order to get the bracelet down to 7 1/4 inches. That's important. If you know if you've done it for a while, the links on these are fairly easy to remove. But if you haven't done it before, you don't want to start off with a watch this expensive. It'd just be terrible if you got it scratched. Let a jeweler do it, but you'll save yourself a ton of money if you just have the person you buy it from do that for you. Okay, just a really nice watch. I like the weight of it. It has a nice weight. Let's go ahead and look at the back of the watch. Can the camera see that? We see the design, and one thing we notice real quick, it does have the screw back case lid, and that's what you would expect from a diver's watch. But we see there in the middle the design of a old-fashioned diver's helmet, and I'm not sure when they used that style, maybe 100 years ago, but I just thought that was really creative. Alright. Also, I'd like to mention while I'm thinking about it, is there's a tremendous amount of information on the back of that case lid. But when you first glance at it, you don't see it and you get a little worried. But there's information there. And then also Tag Heuer puts a lot of information on the very edge of that back cap. You know, I would point it out to the camera, but it's extremely small letters there. And to take off the back of that, you need a special case back remover. I can recommend this, and I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, but it's really important if you own a watch. It's a good advice no matter what kind of watch it is or how much the watch costs. It's not to take the back of the watch off unless you have to change a battery or do repair on it. Whenever people take the back lid off of any watch, what happens is dust does get into the watch movement. You may not see the dust and you may not see the moisture, but there will always be some dust and possibly moisture that will get inside that movement. So really the only time we need to take that back lid off is to do maintenance on the watch. The same can be said of the screw down crown. It has a screw down crown as we would expect because all divers watches have a screw down crown. And so what that means is you just kind of unscrew it, and then that pops out, and then when you move it all the way, you can set the time and so forth. We'll talk about the alarm feature here in just a minute. And then when you get done doing whatever you need to do, make sure you screw that back in. Make sure you screw that crown back in. Really unfortunate things happen when we don't do that. Moisture gets inside the watch and it ruins the watch. It's a really cool looking watch. We notice down here that it has the date feature down here in the 6th position. And to change the date is kind of like most watches. Let me first unscrew the crown. And then, let me see here. Okay. I'm not sure. Let me move. Can the camera see that the date's moving? Okay. So that's really smooth. Then I'm going to go ahead and push that back in. Something that I mention in almost every video, and I know that the viewers might be getting a little tired of me mentioning it, but whether it's a quartz watch like this, a Swiss quartz watch, or a mechanical watch, please never, you just have to be really careful. When you set the time on a watch, always move the hands clockwise. Always, it's good practice to do that. Sometimes when we move the hands in a counterclockwise, it can cause damage. That is particularly true of mechanical watches, but it's also good practice of quartz watches to move the hands in the direction that they naturally go. If you do have a mechanical watch and you adjust the hands counterclockwise, it can damage the watch, and it might even damage a quartz watch, so it's not worth the risk. Notice the 12 or 15, whatever that is down there, the date. Now this is very important, so it's important to listen. Never change the date of a watch. Whether it's a Timex, a Tag Heuer, a Rolex, or anything in between, never change the date of the watch between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Always make sure both hands are pointed down toward here. It can and will mess up that wheel, that date wheel, if you try to adjust the date when the hands are up here. At least half the time it'll break, and then it's a very costly repair to fix that wheel, because takes a lot of time just to get down to the wheel. Okay, so that's just some advice here. The hands are really cool. The minute hand as well as the hour hand and the hour markers are all loomed. And unlike a lot of watches, the loom on this really glows really well. And that's something that we would expect in a diver's watch. The man who wears this will be diving where it's dark, so naturally he'll want that to be loomed. And Tag Heuer uses a high quality loom, evidently, because it really glows. Okay, let me just go over my sheet here real quick. It'd be a real shame to miss anything. It's a Tag Heuer Swiss watch. It's quartz. Some of them are automatic. Some people like the automatic, and some people like the reliability of the quartz. This is a code for this particular watch, way111z.ba0928. It's called the Aquaracer. And sure enough, we'll talk about this in a moment, but there's a timer on here, so it can kind of time how long you've been underneath the water. It's an all stainless steel watch. The bezel ring, the case, as well as the bracelet is all stainless steel. It has two subdials. The one over here to the right, all it does is it just measures seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because the main dial does not have a second hand. So that dial over here near the 3 position is just a second hand. It's not a chronograph watch. Okay, the calendar is below the 6th position. It's a 40.5 millimeter case and about 12.3 millimeters thick. The dial hands are silver colored, but they're loomed. Okay, so here we see the loomed hands and hour markers, and it glows really, really green in the dark. And like we said before, it'll come in real handy when the customer dives deep into the ocean. And they'll get to see those hands really well. 20 millimeter bracelet. Has a clasp deployment. We talked about that. The crystal is sapphire. The bezel turns counterclockwise. It's water resistant, waterproof to 300 meters or 990 feet. It's a screw down crown, polished and brushed. Some of it's polished and some of it's brushed. It has a MSRP of $1,650. Amazon, I looked at today. When you go to look at Amazon, the price might be different. But for a new watch, it's $1,241.55. today on eBay I saw a seller that I think is reputable that has one for sale for $1,190. When you buy from eBay, I recommend that you buy from a U.S. seller. I recommend that you buy one with a high feedback rating, as well as somebody who offers a return policy, 15 days or 30 days. Those are very important when you buy something from eBay. Sam's Club, the price is $1,277. Now, something I'd like to mention just real quickly before we talk about the alarm feature is that this watch, we've already said this, it has MSRP of $1,650, and I'll just give you my own personal opinion on it. That's why we do these videos. That's a lot of money for a watch. And when I look at this watch, I think it's a very handsome watch, a very high quality watch, and I like it a lot. I don't have anything against it. But all the time that I'm reviewing a watch like this, I keep thinking about Seiko. Seiko, a different brand of course, has the model called the PROSPX Prospex, and it's 200 meters instead of 300 meters. But this watch here, did I write down how much it was?
Yeah.
$525. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, we're not comparing apples with apples here because the Seiko, at least this model, is 200 meters and this one is 300 meters. But this one just costs $525. A huge difference. You can buy 3 of those and probably have a little bit of money left over to buy one of these. If you don't plan on diving really deep, 200 meters is a long ways. That's a long ways down there. And if you don't plan on diving very deep, I personally would go with the Seiko. But you may feel differently about that, and certainly if you're a deep diver, you'd want a watch like this. This watch that we've been looking at, I've only had it here at the business for about a couple of hours, so I haven't fine-tuned all my skills concerning it. So when I do the alarm feature here, please bear with me. I might have to try this more than one time. But we see this button over here with the red dot. We also see that the alarm feature, let me go ahead and move the hour hand. That's kind of in our way. Let's go ahead and move that just a little bit. Okay, that's much better. Alright, now we're back in business, I think. Okay, that's kind of trying to... Okay, now we're good to go. This is the alarm dial right here with the red hands and so forth. And you would use this to kind of calculate how long you've been under the water. You don't want to be underneath there so long that you run out of oxygen. So you need to know when to start coming back up toward the surface. So we use this red button over here, and let's go ahead and press that. And then we have to wait about 10 seconds and it'll beep twice. Okay, that's so it beeped twice. And all that tells you is that the watch is engaged. The watch knows that you're now going to be calculating the alarm feature. So now what we do is we set the alarm. And I'm going to do my best on that. You push that button in. Okay, really hard. I wasn't pushing it in hard enough there. And then that little dial goes round and round and round real fast, doesn't it? Now let's suppose you don't want it to go so fast, you just want to go a minute at a time. Can the camera catch that? That's moving just real slow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you set the alarm. And we've already talked about how to set the date by pulling the crown all the way out and setting the date just like you do with pretty much every other watch. The one complaint I only have two complaints, and one of them's really minor. Like I've said, I think for my taste it's just slightly expensive, but everybody has a different opinion about that. The only other slight complaint that I have about the watch is that the alarm isn't very loud.